Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you so much. Do you hear me?
Thank you. Yes, we can hear you and see you very well. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on this panel. And I would like to um, thank the organizers, the sultans, and Shifa from the Horn Center, and Ahmed, and of course Professor Magnet and uh, Professor Warren. Huge support for the mandate. I really appreciate their work and their support and your help regarding the actually addressing the situation of the Afar indigenous communities. And um, and um, and I would like also to emphasize that because Eritrea is a very difficult situation in terms of monitoring purposes and in terms of access to Eritrea. And so relying on, from a monitoring perspective, relying on credible network credible information, this is really proved to be very helpful for the mandate. Particularly the mandate is actually created like now more than 10 years and facing a lot of challenges, including political challenges. And I would like to echo what Professor John mentioned about that 90% of international law is about politics. And and here I would like to like to mention that the Human Rights Council is really a very political body in terms of divisions and in terms of taking recommendations further. And for the last 5 years, being a rapporteur, I face a lot of challenges um, in terms of like trying to navigate and to address critical issues with regard to Eritrea situation, and also issues in the Horn, including actually the first day I assumed my mandate is actually the first day the conflict in Tigray erupted, and then I have to monitor the situation in Eritrea as well as the um, the extraterritorial human rights violations that took place in the Afar in the in the Tigray um, in the Tigray territories. And actually, this is resisted by the Human Rights Council because I was accused of actually exceeding my mandate, that I should actually only focus on the situation of human rights in Eritrea, the territorial aspect. And actually, I took a different perspective in terms of arguing that human rights law applies extraterritorially as far as the Eritrean defense forces that actually have control over certain areas in Ethiopia. And this evokes a lot of political issues, even created some unease with regard to the Ethiopian government position regarding the mandate, because this is also perceived as that the mandate is actually interfering in the territorial sovereignty and also the internal affairs of Ethiopia. In particular, because the report also covered issues related to violations amounting to crimes against humanity committed in certain areas. So this is the dynamics of the reporting on Eritrea in general, and in particular, Eritrea is a country which is so difficult in terms of collaboration. No access to rapporteurs for the last for the last two rapporteurs, and also including myself, and also the level of information you can get and verify with regard to the factual issues. And one of the main issue for a rapporteur to be able to report is actually independence. So you need to get the right information. You need to verify the information. So in a context where you don't have a civil society, a constitution, rule of law, independent judiciary, free media, it is very difficult and um, um, extremely hard to get the right information about monitoring, and also becomes also very hard for the in this context for the Afar indigenous communities to their voice to be heard, and actually with the support of um, Ahmed and uh, Professor Magnet and also other networks and Professor Warren. My last report, my report on 2022 report, focused on the situation of the Afar indigenous communities, and and um, and I would like actually here to refer to the fact that as the report also came after the COVID-19, where the Eritrean government put in place a lot of restrictions on because of the coronavirus on the Afar communities on the coastal areas, and this even affected the economic activities of the Afar people and also the trading with neighboring states, including Yemen, and mainly their main occupation, which is fishing. A part of my report, I receive a lot of information related to allegation of forced disappearance, detention, confiscation of boats, and ransoms, and detention of Afar communities. And this also make it very hard and very difficult with regard to the Afar communities to live their normal life, especially in the coastal areas. And actually, in my report, in my last report, you can look at this in 2022. Also focus on the Navy, how the Navy seized fishing boats and detained many individuals. In particular, the 38th Division, and also I observed in terms of treatment, discrimination by the authorities, lack of fundamental services such as education, access to health, access to decent work, and to livelihood, and also self-services and humanitarian assistance. So all these actually made the Afar indigenous communities very vulnerable in that context, given the overall context in Eritrea. And here I would like to also, based on what Professor Magnet presentation related to the legal framework. For example, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People is very important declaration, and here I would like also to refer to a recent General Assembly resolution issued on 29th of October, very recent this year, by the third committee on its 80th session, and this declaration on the rights of indigenous people, it is very important and an important tool, in my view, to consolidate the right of indigenous people. And I think strategically it has to be used for advocacy purposes. The declaration is a lengthy one, and provided provided like recommendations for that the right of indigenous people has to be maintained, to be strengthened from a legal, political, economic, and social perspective, indigenous people's social and cultural institutions must be respected, and they must have right of full participation um, in the social and economic and cultural life of the state, um, and also one of the important aspects of this resolution is that as the resolution recognized and call for the respect and protection of the rights of indigenous peoples, their territories, their land, and their ecosystem, and also to safeguard the traditions and the spiritual beliefs and also ancestral knowledge. And I would like here to emphasize another legal framework which could be also utilized um, by indigenous Zafar indigenous communities is also an important convention, which is the Indigenous and Tribal Peoples Convention, 1989, Convention number 1169 of the International Labour Organization. And there is a call for states to ratify this convention. So I think this could be an important convention which will protect the Afar indigenous communities, not only in Eritrea, but also in Ethiopia and also in Djibouti. And I think this is an important convention, could be used as a legal tool for the protection of indigenous rights. Also, in terms of legal framework and also from a human rights perspective, the rights of indigenous people are also protected and has to be read in line, in particular with regard to the protection of women and girls, has to be also read in line with the recommendation 39 of 2022 of the related of the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, which actually provided further recommendations to states to provide relevant policies and also legislative aspects to protect and measures to take into consideration the rights of indigenous people, including women and girls. And I think this is also an important framework which also could be used. Also, in terms of health, there is also other organizations like Access to Health. There is a call for the World Health Organization for its particular protection and provision for the health of indigenous people. This is also one of the important aspects raised in the resolution. Also, there is a particular call for the Human Rights Council, and also this is relevant to my mandate, and that the Human Rights Council should take a proactive role in terms of protection of indigenous people, also based on previous resolutions. And of course, there is a call for the respect for the diversity, the culture, the social organization of indigenous people, the traditions, and all these aspects. And I would like here to emphasize that the geographical location of the Afar communities in Eritrea, in particular the coastal areas, and in particular with the current political dynamics in the Horn of Africa, and with what's happening in Ethiopia and Sudan, and also the tension of Ethiopia trying to have access to the sea, and the recognition of Somaliland by Israel, the conflict in Yemen, and the involvement of Saudi Arabia and the UAE, all these dynamics, in my view, is going to create a lot of difficulties and challenges with regard to the Afar communities in the coastal, in the southern Red Sea region or Dankalia. And I think here we need to think strategically from a human rights perspective, also from international law perspective, how the indigenous rights of the Afar communities, and in my view, they are more exposed compared to the Afar indigenous community in Ethiopia or in Djibouti, because here we are talking about a very strategic location, which is the southern Red Sea region. Given the political dynamics in the whole of Africa, and given the scramble for resources, the impact on fishing rights, and of course this is going to affect the marine life in that region, and it might also lead to some kind of displacement. I think it is a note for all the audience, and also for people who are actually working with indigenous people, and to empower the indigenous communities in order to be able to defend their rights, their access to ancestral land, and their rights to land and resources. And I think this is very important, an issue need to be considered currently and also in the future. I will stop here, and thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.